Hey YouTube fans, Eric Hayden here in the garden. Before we do some deadheading and some pruning, I want to show you some of the blooms that are occurring in the garden now. As we get into the month of September, we're starting to cool off. The next couple days we're going to have heat indices in the hundreds, but by and large, as we start to cool off, we start to see some nicer blooms, and the result of some cooler, cloudier weather has produced some really nice blooms in the garden that I want to share with you. So we're going to do a quick garden tour. Here over the next week or so, I'm going to take these bushes down, and as that cooler weather becomes longer lasting, cooler nights, hopefully some rainfall, we'll have some really nice blooms later in the month of October. One that's done really well this year, this is Dolly Parton. It becomes an open bloom pretty quickly, but the fragrance on it is quite strong. Very, very nice. This is our fragrance garden. It does have a little bit of form when it first blooms, but very similar to Mr. Lincoln, it opens pretty quickly. Can't have a fragrance garden without Double Delight. That's a little bit past its peak right now, has a fewer petals, so it's one of the quicker repeat blooms in the garden if you're looking for different varieties of roses. Long stem rose, it's a red one and it's fragrant. This of course is Mr. Lincoln, very, very nice fragrance. Again, it opens quickly, similar to Dolly Parton, so it may not last long as a cut flower, but it is a nice one. Really nice growth habit to this. This is Alina. Look how stocky this one bush is. It's a beautiful yellow. For the exhibitors, it has good hybrid tea form, especially where you have cooler weather. It did a little bit better for me in New York State with regards to that. But the nice thing from an exhibition standpoint, it produces a good bud rose, the early stage. It produces an exhibition bloom and a nice open bloom. So for various categories, either cycle of bloom or open bloom or just hybrid tea, going for that queen of show, it does a pretty good job. So very, very nice rose. It's a good garden rose as well. You can see from the growth habit, just comparing that to something like Fragrant Cloud. Fragrant Cloud, not as good of a grower. This is much shorter than Dolly Parton or Mr. Lincoln. It does have good fragrance, but because of those growth habits, I probably wouldn't be the first to recommend that one with regards to fragrance and growing. I would certainly prefer something like Double Delight, Mr. Lincoln, and even Dolly Parton. This one's a nice one. This is Cajun Moon, sibling to Moonstone. Very, very nice exhibition rose. I got second place in the 2015 Fall National Rose Show in Syracuse with Cajun Moon. Very, very nice one. This one is not as open right now, but this is Baby's Blush. These roses, I got some comments on the roses I grow. They're grown for this form, this spiral form. Notice the center, and it holds its shape for a while. This is what I want for rose shows. So you can't often have everything with roses. So they do tend to be a little more wimpy when it comes to regards with disease resistance, but you have nice blooms like this one on Let Freedom Ring. So what you give up sometimes in fragrance or disease resistance, you get this, Louise Estes. I just love that vibrant pink. Very, very nice bloom in the garden, and it is an exhibition rose. Mr. Caleb has pretty much produced all the roses it's going to do. It's kind of getting toward past peak, so some of them now are open blooms that are quite nice, and I've been happy with the growth habit on that one. Couple more blooms I want to show you. This is not looking as good as it did a couple days ago. I should have got a picture of this. The bush itself is just an average grower, but putting out really big blooms. This is Dublin. That is an exhibition rose as well. Very, very nice rose in the garden in terms of blooms. If you want bigger blooms in exhibition form. One of the taller ones this year has been Randy Scott. It's a beautiful white rose. Has not looked good for me most of the year because of thrips, but the thrips have left me. So that's an open bloom of Randy Scott. Randy Scott's known more for having that classic hybrid tea form. This is a smaller bud here, but the one single bloom per stem having that spiral center. This again has some holes in it from bugs, but you get the idea that it usually pretty big blooms too, but there's that center on Randy Scott. So very, very nice rose. Veterans Honor, I've talked about this before. This also is kind of past its peak right now, but still I can always find a nice bloom on it. Look at the center on that, just a vibrant red. Very, very nice. It doesn't have fragrance like Mr. Lincoln, but it makes up for that with very, very good substance. So it will stay like that even in the heat that we're expecting. And again, bloom after bloom after bloom looks like that. I'm not just showing just the good ones. They all look good on Veteran's Honor. Just an outstanding growing rose. A good garden rose, and if you want to get into exhibiting, it's definitely a must-have. A newer must-have, it could probably stand to have a couple more petals, but it usually has good form, is Crescendo. That is very, very nice. It does have a slight hint of fragrance. It's not as strong or overpowering as something like Mr. Lincoln, but look at that form. Very, very nice. And again, in an exhibition type of rose, we're looking for that spiral center, and we certainly have that. I'm going to wrap things up here. I'll end with Let Freedom Ring coming up. This is Jewel Grace. A little slower on the bloom cycle, so those blooms are just coming in. Marlin's Day, always a real nice one. And Crystalline, I've had a lot of nice open blooms on this in our heat. So that's a beautiful white rose, one of the parents to Randy Scott. So it's got good genes because it has produced some really good offspring. Again, that's a nice open bloom of Crystalline. A lot of my Crystallines have shown form like Randy Scott, but they tend to open really, really quickly. And I haven't had a lot of luck with it in terms of exhibition. And I'll end with Let Freedom Ring. It grows just as tall as Veteran's Honor. It tends to maybe be a little thinner as a bush, but you get these long stems, and again, I have to spray, I have to do different things, but this is why I do it. Some people ask, are roses hard to grow? And I say they need constant care depending on what you're growing. You can grow knockouts and disease-resistant roses, and you get flat petal roses that are good shrubs along your foundation. That's perfectly fine. But if you want to put a little bit more effort, you don't have to spray weekly, but once or twice a month, once a month, to keep black spot from being crazy, you get this. Can you imagine giving this to your significant other, your neighbor? I mean, this is a huge, beautiful red bloom, and this is Let Freedom Ring. So yes, you have to put in a little bit extra effort, but you get a lot of satisfaction out of it. And again, comment below if you've got any questions on some of the varieties I mentioned, but the Geminis, the Veteran's Honor, Let Freedom Ring, those would be three off the top of my head that I would highly recommend that need a little extra care, but not so much as some other hybrid teas. And they produce such nice blooms. That's pretty much it from the garden. We continue to do some maintenance in the garden itself, making sure that the weeds stay under control. And again, the next item that we're going to do is to make sure that the pruning gets done, so that will actually stimulate growth when you prune back. We won't do it necessarily really a hard prune, but a light one to prepare for our best blooms in late October and spring, the cooler months of the year. Hope everyone's doing well, and we'll try to stay cool as heat indices here in the Carolinas get up above 100 here over the next couple days.